3, 2, 1.
Battle of the Decade.
Fight.
I must break you.
So for the Battle of the Decade in this episode and our main topic, we'll be fighting it out on which decade had the best arcade game as a child.
Round 1. Let's fight.
Choose your fighter.
So there are just so many arcade games to choose from the 1980s. Some of the honorable mentions that I had were Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, Burger Time, Pole Position, Missile Command, Q*bert, Centipede, Dig Dug, Frogger, Defender, Rampage, Street Fighter, Tron, and two of my favorite arcade games, Dragon's Lair and Galaga. But my choice for the best arcade game from the 1980s for me as a child was Double Dragon. It was one of the first beat-em-up games with a different level of violence that came out in 1987, released out of Japan, and a 1 or 2 player game that I remember pumping the most quarters in when I was younger.
Before my choice for best arcade game from the 90s, I have some honorable mentions, which include Lethal Enforcers, Primal Rage, Daytona USA, Virtua Fighter 2, and NFL Blitz. But my pick for the best arcade game from the 1990s is Mortal Kombat. It made fatality a commonly appropriated buzzword for the perceived impact video game violence had on arcade-dwelling youth and became a pop culture reference. The game itself took moments to learn and a lifetime to master, offering a completely different aesthetic and combo system to absorb and remember.
Round 2. Let's fight.
Tail of the tape.
And some of the reasons why I picked Double Dragon, it was the first game I remember playing that had that kind of violence and a fighting game that you could also continue once the game was over. So it's one of the first games I remember that if you died, let's say in the game, you could pump in another quarter and continue from where you left off.
Like Respawn.
Yeah. It was one of the first arcade games that I remember playing that you could actually play with player 2 on the same team and work together in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed the graphics and the different level of gameplay compared to other games at that time. And it was the first game that I really became addicted to and just had to finish, regardless of how many quarters it costed me.
And some reasons why I chose Mortal Kombat include its characters, which were digitized from motion capture footage of martial arts actors. They looked realistic by the standards of the time. Their movements had a choppy quality, and the fighters never looked like they really inhabited their photorealistic settings. But Mortal Kombat's gory, lifelike gloom gave it a heavy metal album cover feel that set it apart from other fighting games. Mortal Kombat's brawlers bled, froze, and died in a number of explicit ways, ranging from brutal impalement into a pit of spikes to messy dismemberment. And the game's brawler invested its viscera with a panache that became the game's main draw, or main appeal.
Round 3. Let's fight.
Counterattack.
Some things I remember about Mortal Kombat, it was definitely the most violent game that I've ever seen up until that point. Kind of like Double Dragon, but there's just a total difference in level of violence there.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, the phrases like fatality, I think even more common phrase from that game was finish them.
Right.
Both phrases like that became so popular and they're, still said today type thing. It was also the first game that made learning the moves for things like fatality a commonplace. I also remember like some spin-offs. Do you remember a game called Pit Fighter?
No, I don't
I think
remember.
it was a Sega game, so it used real like actors
Okay.
kind of like fighting in a pit type thing.
Mm.
But Mortal Kombat was a game I enjoyed playing, and even though I got my ass kicked most of the time, I even enjoyed seeing things like fatality. And as much as I liked Mortal Kombat, I still enjoyed Double Dragon more because I liked the teamwork aspect of it and the story and advancing level to level even more than Mortal Kombat.
All right, some of my thoughts on Double Dragon. I also enjoyed this game quite a lot. I never played it at the arcade per se. I would play it on my Super Nintendo gaming system. I also like the fact that, as a team, you work as a team with player 1 and player 2 to fight off all these ninjas coming to attack you, and then you face a big boss that you have to defeat together. The only qualm I have with that game is if you're playing it with someone else, the other person has to be kind of good or as good as you or better. If you're playing with someone who's not really familiar with the buttons or who's not really good at gaming, it's kind of like they're dragging you down as you progress through the levels. But aside from that, I think it's a solid game. But I'd have to say Mortal Kombat was really cool for me at the time, because seeing all that gore and, as you said, like the fatalities and, some of the characters turning the other ones into small little baby animals to kind of humiliate them towards the end of the levels, I thought was a lot more entertaining, a lot more appealing for me at the time.
Round 4. Let's fight.
Final round.
And finally, in the final round, again, some of the reasons I chose Double Dragon as my favorite arcade game as a child. Double Dragon was the first game I remember that you could continue by inserting a quarter to play or continue the game. I enjoyed the teamwork and playing along with player 2 to accomplish the same goal. It was the first arcade game that I actually got addicted to and would go out of my way to go to an arcade or somewhere that had the game. I probably spent the most money playing in comparison to other arcade games with Double Dragon. And obviously, I had the most fun playing this game when I was younger compared to other arcade games.
And some final notes on Mortal Kombat. I thought that the game pointed the way forward. It was, mechanically speaking, not all that different from the hottest Japanese arcade games of the time. However, no one would mistake Mortal Kombat's grainy, gritty, digitized visuals and blood-soaked effects for something from Nintendo or Sega. Mortal Kombat became a huge hit on its own terms, both in its sequel rank among the 10 most successful arcade games of all time. I thought it was fun. I thought it was entertaining. At any time when I was, hanging out with my friends, it was probably, number one on our list of things to do. And those are some of the reasons why I choose Mortal Kombat as the best arcade game.
And it's still around today.
It is. I haven't played the...
Is it 11 now?
I haven't played 11, but I've heard good things.
And Double Dragon is not around.
No. Remember, you can vote on which of these arcade games you thought was better in the poll in the above top right corner here on YouTube, or on any of our social media at 10 Years Apart Pod, or at our website, 10yearsapart.com.
And finally, on this episode of 10 Years Apart, we're going to look back at a 1990s shoe fad that was known as the Reebok Pump Sneakers. Could they make a comeback? Why did they fade away? It's time for Would That Fly Today? Did you like that clip? Well, if you did, remember to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this. You can also find the full version of the podcast this clip was from on our YouTube channel and more videos from 10 Years Apart. Comment below, tell us your ideas and stories from the 80s or 90s, and get more at 10yearsapart.com. Thanks again, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us out.